thought it was just another errand. I walked into the pharmacy after work, tired and ready to grab my refill like always. But when the pharmacist looked at my prescription, her hands began to shake. She glanced at me and whispered, "Where did you get this?" I told her my doctor's name, and her face went pale. She called another pharmacist over and they both stared at the paper like it was something dangerous. Finally, she said, "I can't fill this." I asked her why, confused and a little embarrassed as people in line started to stare. She looked right into my eyes and said, "Because your doctor's license was revoked 6 months ago." My heart dropped. I could barely breathe. Before I could even ask what she meant, she added something that made my stomach twist. "He's been under investigation, and you need to come with me right now." That moment changed everything. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe for more real and powerful stories like this. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My name is Lena Brooks, and until that day, I thought my life was finally starting to get back on track. I worked as a school counselor at Lincoln Middle School. I loved my job, helping kids who reminded me of my younger self, quiet, shy, always pretending to be fine, even when things weren't. But for the past year, I'd been battling something that made it hard to keep that same energy: chronic migraines, panic attacks, and constant fatigue. It felt like my own body had turned against me. Doctors kept giving me different explanations. Stress, hormones, too much screen time. Nothing ever worked. I tried everything: new diets, vitamins, even meditation, but nothing stopped the pain. My mom, Elaine, kept worrying. She called every other night saying, "You can't keep living like this, Lena. You need a doctor who actually listens." Then one day, a coworker told me about a neurologist she swore by, Dr. Alan Keene. She said he was brilliant, that he'd helped her husband with severe nerve pain. At that point, I was desperate enough to try anything. From the first appointment, Dr. Keene seemed different. He was confident but gentle, with that calm voice doctors use when they want you to trust them. He said he specialized in neurobehavioral pain management. He listened, took notes, and said, "You've been dealing with this for too long. I think I can help." He prescribed a new medication, something he said was designed to target the brain's pain receptors. He told me it wasn't widely available yet, but promised it was safe. "You'll start feeling better in a week," he said, "and you'll finally sleep again." And for a while, he was right. The migraines faded. I could work full days without needing to lie down. I even started smiling more. My mom said she was glad to see me happy again. But a few weeks later, something strange started happening. I began to feel foggy, like I was moving through my days, half awake. I'd forget where I parked my car, miss meetings at work, or lose track of conversations mid-sentence. Then came the nightmares, vivid, terrifying ones that left me shaking in bed. When I told Dr. Keene, he didn't seem worried. "That's normal," he said. "Your body's just adjusting. Stay consistent with the medication." I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I didn't want to go back to the pain, the sleepless nights, the helplessness. So I kept taking the pills. A few weeks later, I ran out. It was a Friday afternoon, and I was exhausted from work. I stopped at the pharmacy, like always, holding the small folded prescription he'd written out by hand. I remember smiling at the woman behind the counter. Her name tag said Sandra. I'd seen her before, but we'd never spoken more than a quick hello. She took my paper, looked it over, and typed something into her computer. Then she froze. Her face changed completely. She glanced at me again, then called another pharmacist over. They whispered to each other for a moment, and I started to feel uneasy. When she came back, her expression was serious. "Ms. Brooks, can you tell me where you got this?" I pointed at the prescription. "My neurologist, Dr. Keene." "Why?" She stared at the paper, her fingers trembling slightly. "Ma'am, I need to check something," she said. Then she stepped away and made a phone call. I could hear her whispering to someone, her voice getting tighter. When she came back, her eyes were wide with concern. "Lena," she said quietly, "I can't fill this prescription. Your doctor's license was revoked 6 months ago." I felt the room tilt. "That's not possible," I said. "I just saw him last week." Sandra shook her head. "You need to sit down. There's more to this, and you need to hear it." At that moment, everything I thought I knew about my doctor and my health began to unravel. I could barely hear Sandra's words over the sound of my heartbeat. The pharmacy suddenly felt smaller, the hum of the refrigerators and soft background music turning distant and muffled. "What do you mean revoked?" I finally asked. My voice came out sharper than I meant it to. Sandra hesitated, then lowered her tone, glancing around to make sure no one else could hear. "Dr. Alan Keene's medical license was revoked 6 months ago," she said. "He's not legally allowed to practice anymore. He's under investigation for prescription fraud." Her words didn't make sense. I had just seen him the week before. His office was open, clean, professional. The receptionist greeted me by name. There was even a waiting room full of other patients. "There must be a mistake," I said, shaking my head. "I saw him. He gave me this prescription himself." Sandra sighed. "I've had 3 people come in this month with prescriptions from the same doctor, all with invalid registration numbers. His clinic isn't listed anymore. Whatever he's doing, it's not legitimate." I stood there frozen, gripping the counter. I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but the fear creeping into her voice told me she wasn't. She reached for the prescription again and carefully slid it back across the counter toward me. "Don't take any more of that medication until you know what it is," she said. "Please." Before I could respond, she picked up her phone again and said, "I'm going to report this, but you should also contact the authorities. If you have any of his pills left, keep them safe. They might need to test them." I nodded, numb. My body felt heavy as I stepped away from the counter. My hands were shaking, and the paper crumpled slightly in my grip. I left the pharmacy without saying another word, walked to my car, and sat there staring at the prescription. My mind raced through every appointment I'd had with Dr. Keene. The white coat, the soft music in his office, the way he'd talk about progressive medicine, and how traditional doctors didn't understand how the mind and body worked together. I remembered how calm his voice had been when he said he was retraining my brain to stop feeling pain. I had believed every word. When I got home, my mom was in the kitchen making soup. She turned around when she saw my face. "What happened?" she asked. I dropped the prescription on the counter. "They wouldn't fill it," I said quietly. "They said Dr. Keene's license was revoked." Her eyes widened. "What? That can't be right." That's what I said. But Sandra, the pharmacist, she showed me proof on her computer. He's under investigation for fraud. And she said there are other people like me. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Lena, those pills you've been taking, what if they're not safe?" I opened the cabinet and took down the orange bottle. The label looked normal. My name, the dosage, the date. But when I looked closer, I noticed something I had never paid attention to before. There was no manufacturer listed, just the drug name and a small black code. I felt a rush of cold fear move through me. "How did I not notice this before?" I whispered. My mom grabbed her phone. "We're calling the police." That night, 2 officers came to the house. One of them, a calm man named Detective Miles Avery, took my statement while the other collected the medication bottle and the handwritten prescription. I told them everything, how I found Dr. Keene, how he acted, what he'd prescribed. The detective listened carefully, jotting down notes. "You said you've been seeing him for about 6 months?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Almost every other week. He said my body needed regular monitoring." He exchanged a look with the other officer. "We've had reports of a doctor by that name running an unlicensed practice," he said. "The address you gave, did it have a sign outside?" I thought back. It did, but it was small. It just said Keene Neurology Center. He nodded slowly. "We've been trying to locate that clinic. It's been changing locations every few months." The words hit me like a punch. "Changing locations? Why?" He sighed. "To avoid getting shut down. It's a pattern we've seen with unlicensed operators. They move around once they're flagged." I felt my stomach drop. "So he's been doing this for a while?" "Yes," the detective said quietly. "And not just with migraine medication. He's been prescribing experimental drugs, compounds that aren't approved for human use. Some patients had severe side effects. One was hospitalized. I could feel the room spinning. My mom gripped my hand tightly as the detective continued. "We're sending your pills to the lab for analysis. I'll be in touch once we have results. In the meantime, don't take anything else he gave you. And if he tries to contact you, call me immediately. He handed me a card with his number. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the card. Everything around me felt off, too quiet, too still. The air felt heavier, like something terrible had been living right under my nose, and I'd been too trusting to see it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dr. Keen's office. His calm smile, the way he'd say, "You're doing so well, Lena." I kept hearing Sandra's voice in my head. Don't take any more of that medication. By morning, I made a decision. I wasn't waiting for someone else to figure this out. I was going to find out who Dr. Keen really was and what he'd been giving me. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and the same dull fear that had kept me awake all night. I sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the empty spot on my nightstand where the bottle of pills used to sit. My head throbbed, but I refused to take anything else until I knew exactly what was going on. I opened my laptop and typed Dr. Alan Keen, neurologist, into the search bar. For a moment, nothing came up except old listings and generic medical directories. Then I saw it, an article headline from a local news outlet, "Neurologist under investigation for medical fraud and unlicensed trials." My stomach twisted. I clicked the link, and there it was. His picture, the same calm smile, the same confident expression. The article said his license had been suspended for prescribing unapproved compounds to patients without consent. It mentioned multiple complaints, missing medical records, and one patient's hospitalization. The date of the article? 7 months ago. I felt sick. That meant he had been lying to me the entire time. Every appointment, every reassuring word, every small smile when I thanked him, fake. He knew he wasn't allowed to practice, yet he still wrote prescriptions, still took money from patients, still pretended to care. I printed the article and grabbed my phone. The detective, Miles Avery, had left his number the night before. My hands shook as I dialed. He answered on the second ring. "Detective Avery." "It's Lena Brooks," I said. "I found something. I think it's him." He listened quietly as I explained the article and my appointments. Then he said, "We've been tracking his activity, but he's careful. He changes clinic addresses and uses fake staff. You said you saw a receptionist. Do you remember what she looked like?" I closed my eyes, trying to picture her. Yes, she was maybe in her 20s, blonde hair, blue scrubs. She called him Dr. K. She seemed nervous. "Did she ever give you any paperwork to sign?" he asked. "Yes, some kind of consent form. He said it was for data privacy, but now I'm not sure." He exhaled. "That's what we suspected. He was running what looks like an illegal clinical trial without approval. We'll need a copy of that form if you still have it." I hurried to the small drawer where I kept my medical papers. Sure enough, it was there, neatly folded, his name printed at the top. The form didn't mention anything about experimental treatments, but at the bottom, in fine print, it said, "Patient agrees to participate in ongoing treatment research related to neurochemical response." My chest tightened. I hadn't signed up for research. I signed up to get help. Detective Avery told me to meet him later that afternoon at the precinct. My mom insisted on coming with me. She was quiet in the car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I can't believe this man did this to you," she said. "He could have killed you." At the station, Detective Avery led us into a small interview room. On the table was a laptop and a thick folder labeled Keen Investigation. He pulled out a few photographs. Patients, clinic buildings, receipts. "We've found 5 different office addresses under his name," he explained. "Each one closed after a few months. He paid rent in cash and used fake credentials to get medical supplies." I stared at the pictures, numb. How could someone do this and not get caught sooner? "He covered his tracks well," the detective said. "He used to be a real neurologist, trained, licensed, even respected. But about a year ago, he was accused of falsifying research data. When he lost his license, he didn't stop. He just went underground." "Underground?" I repeated. He nodded. "He's been running something like a shadow practice, treating patients off the record, prescribing drugs from unauthorized labs. We believe he was selling data from those patients to pharmaceutical companies overseas." My hands started shaking again. "So he used me," I whispered. He was testing those pills on me without telling me. Detective Avery gave a small nod. That's what it looks like. But your information could help us prove it. He asked for everything I had. Messages, appointment notes, anything that could connect me to him. I gave him copies of my receipts and the prescription paper Sandra refused to fill. Before we left, he said, "Lena, you did the right thing. Most people would have ignored their instincts. What you did could stop this man for good." When we got home that evening, I sat by the window watching the rain streak down the glass. I felt exhausted, but beneath the fear was something new, a quiet anger. For months, I had trusted this man with my health, and he had turned that trust into a weapon. I wasn't going to let him disappear again. The next morning, I went to the address listed on one of my old receipts, just to see for myself. The clinic sign was gone. The door was locked, the windows covered with paper. I peered through a crack and saw the empty waiting room. The furniture was still there, but the place looked abandoned, like someone had left in a hurry. On the counter, half hidden behind the blinds, I saw a cardboard box with bottles inside, small orange pill bottles, identical to mine. My pulse quickened. I took a photo through the glass and sent it to Detective Avery. His reply came minutes later. "Good work. Stay away from that location. We'll handle it." I closed my phone and finally exhaled. For the first time since this started, I didn't feel powerless. I was scared, yes, but I was also determined. Whatever Dr. Keene had been doing, it was about to end, and I was going to make sure of it. 2 days later, Detective Avery called me early in the morning. His voice was calm, but carried a sense of urgency. "Lena, we have a lead. We tracked Dr. Keene to a new address. It's a private residence he's been using as his operating base. We're organizing a team to bring him in." My heart started racing. It felt strange hearing his name again, like something poisonous that had been lurking beneath my skin. The detective asked if I'd be willing to come to the station later that afternoon to confirm some evidence. I agreed, though part of me wanted to back out. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face the man who had lied to me so easily. My mom insisted on driving me. She had barely let me out of her sight since the night the police first came. On the way there, she said quietly, "You're stronger than you think. You did what no one else had the courage to do." I tried to smile, but my stomach twisted with nerves. When we arrived, Detective Avery met us at the entrance and led us into a conference room filled with photos, papers, and evidence bags. On one of the screens was a live feed from a hidden camera pointed at the house where Keene was supposedly staying. My chest tightened when I saw him, wearing the same white coat I'd seen 100 times before, walking around his living room as if he were still running a clinic. "Is that him?" the detective asked. I nodded, slowly. "That's him." He turned to another officer. "All right, let's move." They began preparing for the arrest, checking equipment and reviewing the plan. I sat quietly, watching the feed. The longer I looked, the more surreal it felt. This man had seemed so normal, so professional, and now here he was, being surrounded by police officers. An hour later, the detective came back into the room, his expression serious but relieved. "We've got him." He didn't resist. My body felt lighter, but my heart was still pounding. I wasn't sure whether to cry or breathe. "What happens now?" I asked. "He's being questioned," Avery said. "We also found several boxes of unmarked medication inside the house, same labels as yours. He had patient files, including yours, stored digitally. He kept notes on dosage reactions and emotional responses." I felt sick. "He was testing us," I whispered. "Yes," the detective said. "He was running unauthorized drug trials. He called it a neurological empathy study, but it was just a cover for selling the compound formula to a foreign pharmaceutical lab. He was paying his bills through those deals." "Were people hurt?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "At least 4 patients have been hospitalized. One is in critical condition. You were lucky your pharmacist caught it early." Sandra. Hearing that reminded me I hadn't thanked her properly. She was the one who stopped this from going further. If she hadn't trusted her instincts, I might have kept taking those pills until it was too late. Later that week, I received a call from Detective Avery again. He said Dr. Keene had confessed during questioning. When they confronted him with the evidence, he admitted everything. How he'd been buying compounds from unregulated labs, mixing them himself, and handing them out under fake prescription names. He said he wanted to make a name for himself after losing his license. The idea of it made me furious. To him, we weren't people, we were experiments. A few days later, Avery invited me to attend a preliminary hearing. I wasn't required to go, but I needed closure. My mom came with me, holding my hand as we walked into the courthouse. Dr. Keene sat there in his suit, hands cuffed, his calm expression gone. When he saw me, he looked startled for a second, then lowered his eyes. It was strange seeing him without his confident smile. When the judge read out the charges, fraud, medical negligence, and unauthorized human experimentation, I felt something inside me loosen. It wasn't joy, exactly. It was relief. For months, I had let this man control my health, my body, my peace of mind. Now he was the one being held accountable. After the hearing, Sandra showed up outside the courthouse. She walked up to me, her face kind but tired. "I'm so glad you're all right," she said. When I saw that prescription, something just didn't feel right. I couldn't let it go. I hugged her tightly. "You saved me," I said. "You really did." She smiled softly. "No, you saved yourself. You listened when something felt off. Most people ignore that feeling." That night, I went home and sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders. The air was cool, and the streetlights flickered softly in the distance. My mom brought me a cup of tea and sat beside me. "You did good, Lena," she said quietly. "You didn't just protect yourself, you helped protect others." I nodded slowly, watching the steam rise from my cup. For the first time in months, I felt calm. The fear had finally settled into something gentler, a kind of strength I didn't know I had. Before going inside, I opened my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken during the investigation, the prescription paper, the abandoned clinic, the article. Then I deleted them one by one, not because I wanted to forget, but because I was ready to move on. When I went to bed that night, I didn't take any pills. I didn't need to. For the first time in a long time, I slept without fear. The weeks after Dr. Keene's arrest passed in a strange blur. My days were quiet but heavy. There were still nights I woke up drenched in sweat, hearing his calm voice in my head saying, "You're doing great, Lena." It took time to stop associating his words with fear. Every appointment, every prescription, every moment I had trusted him, it replayed in my mind like a broken film reel. But now, instead of feeling helpless, I felt angry. Angry at what he did, but also determined to never let anyone have that kind of control over me again. Detective Avery called a few times with updates. He said Keene's case had expanded. There were now 9 known victims, each with similar stories. Some were still recovering physically, others were dealing with the emotional scars. "Your testimony helped tie everything together," he told me. "Because of you, he can't hurt anyone else." I thanked him, but the truth was, I wasn't looking for recognition. I just wanted peace. My mom insisted I see a therapist, and I finally agreed. The first few sessions were hard. I didn't like talking about how it felt to be manipulated or how scared I was to trust another doctor. But therapy helped me understand that what happened wasn't my fault. I had done what anyone would, trusted someone who appeared professional and kind. Healing wasn't quick, but slowly, I started to feel like myself again. 3 months later, I went back to work at the middle school. The first day was rough. I could tell my coworkers were cautious, not sure how to talk to me. But when one of my students, a quiet 8th grader named Jordan, came to my office crying about his parents' divorce, something clicked inside me. Listening to him, offering comfort, I realized helping others was what had always grounded me. I wasn't broken. I had just been tested. One afternoon after work, I stopped by the pharmacy. Sandra was behind the counter, as always, sorting bottles and chatting with a customer. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. "Lena, I was just thinking about you. How are you doing?" I smiled, genuinely this time. "Better," I said. "Much better. I wanted to thank you again." She came around the counter and gave me a warm hug. "You don't have to thank me," she said. "You listened when I told you something was wrong. Most people wouldn't have. You saved yourself." I shook my head. "You noticed something I couldn't. You didn't ignore your gut, and you didn't brush me off. That made all the difference." Sandra smiled. That's what we're supposed to do, but it means a lot to hear you say that. Before leaving, I handed her a small card, a simple thank you note with a short message, for seeing what others didn't, for speaking when it mattered. She read it and smiled through watery eyes. "You're stronger than you know, Lena," she said softly. Walking out of that pharmacy felt symbolic, like closing the final chapter of a long, painful story. The air outside was cool, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel weighed down by fear. I felt free. A few weeks later, I attended the sentencing hearing. Keene sat in the same courtroom, his hands cuffed, his expression empty. When the judge announced his sentence, 15 years in prison for fraud, negligence, and unauthorized medical experimentation, I felt a strange calm wash over me. Justice didn't erase what happened, but it gave me something I hadn't felt in a long time: closure. After the hearing, Detective Avery approached me. "You did good, Lena," he said. "It's not easy facing something like this head-on." I nodded. "I just wanted to make sure no one else had to go through it." He smiled faintly. "You did exactly that." When I got home that night, I sat on the porch with my mom again, the same spot where we'd sat months ago after everything fell apart. The evening was quiet except for the hum of crickets. "You look peaceful," she said, sipping her tea. "I am," I replied, for the first time in a long while. We sat there in silence for a while before I said, "You know, I used to think doctors were the people who saved lives, but now I know it's not always that simple. Sometimes, the people who save us are the ones we least expect. A pharmacist who pays attention, a detective who listens, a mother who refuses to give up." My mom smiled softly. "And sometimes, it's the person who finds the courage to speak up." Her words stayed with me long after she went inside. I thought about how easy it is to lose yourself when you're sick, scared, or desperate. You hand over your trust, hoping someone else knows what's best for you. But sometimes, the real strength comes from listening to your own instincts, that small voice inside you that whispers when something doesn't feel right. That's the one that saves you. The next morning, I woke up early and went for a walk. The world looked brighter, cleaner, somehow lighter. The wind was cool, and the sun peeked through the trees, painting everything in soft gold. Life felt new again. Not perfect, not fixed, but real. I decided to start volunteering at a local health awareness program that taught people how to verify their doctors, understand prescriptions, and recognize red flags. It felt right to turn something terrible into something that could help others. Looking back now, I realized that what happened to me wasn't just a nightmare. It was a lesson in awareness, strength, and faith in my own voice. So if you're watching this, remember this one thing. You have the right to ask questions, to trust your instincts, and to walk away when something doesn't feel right. And if this story moved you, make sure to subscribe for more true, powerful stories like this one. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Stay safe, stay aware, and never stop trusting yourself.